A School of Her Own by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 2. Is This God's Will? Is there any mail for me, Pa? I had hurried out to the barn when I saw him coming from town.
Were you looking for mail? He teased.
You know I am. Did I hear from North Branch yet?
No, I'm afraid not, Pa replied. But will this do instead?
He handed me a letter from Russ Bradley, which I slipped into my pocket to read later. Thanks, Pa. I'm glad to hear from Russ, but I really want to hear about school. I was so sure I had a chance when I went for the interview. What do you think is holding them up? Pa lifted the parcels out of the buggy and we started toward the house.
It hasn't been a month yet,
he said.
It takes time for a school board to get together and consider all the applicants.
All the applicants? Pa, you know there were only 2 of us, and the other was a man. He can apply somewhere else. He told me he didn't care where he went because he's only going to teach for 1 year. I'm planning to make it my life's work. Pa looked at me quizzically.
That's pretty ambitious planning. Are you sure that's what the Lord wants you to do with the rest of your life?
I never thought about it not being, I replied. He made the way for me to finish school and get a teacher's certificate. Isn't that proof enough of his will? He could have stopped me at any time. Pa looked thoughtful, but he didn't say any more about it. Later, as we did dishes, I brought the subject up with Ma. Ma, what did you plan to do with your life? She stopped with a dish half-washed and stared at me in surprise. I mean, when you were my age. Reuben was a year old when I was your age, she laughed. I didn't have many plans beyond surviving in the windy log cabin we lived in. Why do you ask? Did the Lord tell you to marry Pa? No, I don't recall that he did. Then how do you know it was the Lord's will? I persisted. What if you married the wrong man? You weren't very old. That's right, Ma agreed. I was 15 years old when we were married on Christmas Day. I didn't turn 16 till January. Why do you ask? Do you think I married the wrong man? Oh, Ma, of course I don't. I wouldn't want anyone but Pa, but how did you know? I really never thought about that, Mabel, Ma replied. I do believe that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. And in Jeremiah, the Bible tells us that the Lord knows the plans he has for us, plans for good and not evil. That sounds pretty certain, doesn't it? After supper, Sarah Jane came over and we wandered down to the brook to see how the blueberries were coming. You know, I told her, it sounds to me as though we're wasting our time trying to decide what we want to do when we grow up. It looks like God already has it worked out and all we can do is go along with it.
I don't think so, Mabel, she disagreed. If it worked that way, we'd never make any wrong choices or decisions, and goodness knows we've made plenty of those in our lifetime. Do you think God had it all worked out for you to throw your history notes in the fire and carry your scrap paper to school? I laughed. No, that was my fault. It was just carelessness. But maybe God allowed it to show me that I needed to pay more attention to what I was doing. What made you think about all this anyway? Sarah Jane wanted to know.
Pa asked me if I was sure it would be God's will for me to teach for the rest of my life.
So you think if it is, there's nothing you can do about it? You'll have to teach whether you want to or not?
I'm not sure what I think, I replied. I'm just trying to decide how much is up to me and how much is up to God.
I'd say it's up to you to get an education and apply for a school, and up to God to see that you get it if he wants you to have it. You didn't hear from North Branch today, huh?
No, but I just remembered I did get a letter from Russ.
I pulled it out of my pocket. You mean you haven't opened it yet? Oh, Mabel, you are impossible.
I forgot all about it, I admitted. But I'm sure it isn't old news yet. Just came this morning.
I tore open the envelope and read the letter out loud. Dear Mabel, how is your summer going? I've been working with my father in the bank to earn extra money for school. As you know, Warren Carter and I will be rooming together at the university this fall. We're looking forward to it. Too bad we won't have your competition to keep us on our toes. I'm writing to invite you to spend the day in town on the 25th of July. Thomas is asking Sarah Jane to come also. The county fair will be open, and we could have a great day together. Drop me a card to say you're coming, and we'll meet you a week from Saturday. Yours truly, Russ.
Thomas didn't write me, Sarah Jane said. At least, I didn't get a letter this morning.
Do you think we should go?
I don't know why not, I replied. It sounds like fun. We can go on the early train and come back in the evening. I'll write and tell him we'll be there.
Ma was pleased about the invitation.
That's a nice idea, Mabel. You've worked hard this summer and your school will be starting before you know it.
Besides, Pa added with a twinkle, Ma likes that young man. If he were a few years older, he'd make a good son-in-law.
He couldn't be your son-in-law unless he married me, I retorted. And I'm not getting married. It isn't in my plans. At least, it's not unless the Lord wills otherwise, I added. Maybe that's the answer to your question, Ma said. Make all your preparations subject to God's pleasure and you'll never be disappointed.
Sarah Jane's letter came, and we sent a card accepting their invitation. A week seemed a long time to wait. Now to decide what to wear, Sarah Jane said. What do you think?
Anything that's cool, I declared. How about your flowered muslin?
I guess so, and you could wear your dotted Swiss. For goodness sake, Mabel, don't get any ideas about making something new for the occasion. I couldn't stand to miss the train while you were putting in the last stitches.
How many times have you missed a train because of me? I asked. Honestly, Sarah Jane, you don't give me credit for the sense God gave a goose.
Maybe that much, she allowed. But you know from past experience how often you need a keeper.
And you know from past experience that you'd better not apply for that job. But this trip is going off without a hitch, you'll see.
Saturday dawned without a cloud in sight. Pa offered to take us to the train, and we stopped for Sarah Jane in front of her gate. Now you girls have a good time today, Pa instructed as he let us out at the depot. I'll be here to pick you up when the train comes in this evening.
Thanks, Pa. We'll see you later.
The telegraph machine was clacking when we entered the station, but no one was around. Where's the station master? Sarah Jane wondered. It's almost time for the train to be in.
Where is everybody? I said. There are always more passengers than this, or at least people waiting for someone to come in.
We went over and looked through the ticket window.
Mr. Barnes, I called. May we get a ticket?
Mr. Barnes appeared from a back room.
How's that?
A ticket, I repeated. We want to go to Rosamond.
Train's gone. Left an hour ago.
An hour ago, but it's not 7:30 yet, Sarah Jane protested.
That's true,
Mr. Barnes agreed.
But that's not got much to do with it.
He pointed with his thumb to a sign on the wall and returned to the back room. Schedule change for Grand Trunk Railway, effective July 15th, 1891.
This was the trip that was going without a hitch,
Sarah Jane moaned.
If I were 10 years younger, I'd bawl.
I may bawl anyway, I said. Do you realize that Pa has gone and we have no way to get back home except to walk?
We sank down on a bench to consider the possibilities.
This is not what I had in mind when I got out of bed this morning, Sarah Jane declared. What do we do now?
Do you suppose Mr. Barnes would send a telegram to tell the boys we missed the train? I said. We'll have to let them know somehow. I hate for them to find out that we didn't have the brains to check the train schedule.
How would we know it would change all of a sudden? Sarah Jane said crossly. It's never changed before. Yep, I could do that,
Mr. Barnes assured us when we asked.
What's the name? Wait just a minute. There's a message coming in.
When he came back to the window, he was shaking his head.
You young ladies can be glad you missed that one, he said. The train derailed up toward Scottville. Several people injured. Somebody was looking out for you.
Sarah Jane turned pale, and we both sat down again.
We know who the somebody was, Mr. Barnes, she said. God took care of us by using our own mistake. I'm never again going to doubt that my life is planned by him.
Mr. Barnes sent our message, and we headed home.
This is probably no farther than we would have walked at the fair, I said. And we learned something about God's will. We can make our plans, but if we're trusting him, he'll work them out for our good. We walked along silently for a while, thinking about how good God was to protect us from danger.
Do you suppose other people on that train were trusting God with their plans too?
Sarah Jane asked suddenly.
Why did God protect us and not them?
I don't know, I admitted. Maybe he wanted to show them that whatever circumstances they were in, he could take care of them. Whenever I say, why did God allow that, Pa tells me that if I'm going to trust God with my life, I have to let him be God and not question his decisions.
I guess that's right, Sarah Jane said. If we had all the answers, we'd be taking over his job, and I'm not ready for that. So, she continued, what shall we do with the rest of our day? What have you always wanted to do and never had time for?
Nothing I can do in these clothes. I think by the time I get home, I'm going to want to take a lunch and sit under our tree and let the world go by.
That sounds good,
Sarah Jane agreed.
There's no way we could botch up a plan like that, is there?
End of chapter 2.